Hi, people. This is the Motion Picture Illustrators panel. How are you? Okay. Anybody here see the production designers panel in the same room yesterday? Okay, the hardcore people who want to get a job. All right. We are brought here, this is our sponsor, by the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Moving Picture Technicians, Artists, Allied Crafts of USA, its territories, and Canada. IATSE, or the IA. IATSE apparently, I don't know, some people think it's diminutive, but it's actually a longer word. Anyway, I'd like you, we are the men and women of the motion picture illustration craft, part of Local 800. We represent the illustrators, storyboard artists, and matte painters that work in film today. And we have 4 of the best in the business, and me. And the thing is, though, they're all excellent at drawing and painting and digital hokery-pokery, or whatever Anthony Scalia's word of the day is. But the reason they're hired is for their imagination and their ability to tell stories. And we're going to give you a little peek at that right now. We can hit the slideshow. So I'd like to introduce our panel. This is Jeffrey Errico. There's Amy Umezu, Rob McKinnon, who brought his family, and Patrick Rodriguez. If you can't read from there, I'm Tim Burgard. All right. Some of you may have read in the listing for this that we had another person, Ed Natividad, and he wanted to be here, and he'll probably be here next year. But this is one of the things that's so special about what you're seeing tonight, is that we work on projects sometimes years before the films come out, and the studios can be very, very protective of what their material is. And in fact, probably all of us here have worked on a film that isn't out yet, where we have to be careful about what we say or what we show. And in fact, Ed has been working on Batman versus Superman. And if it isn't in Hall H, Warner Brothers doesn't want it to be presented here. So hope you come next year and see him. He's sorry he couldn't be here tonight. All right, but you know what? The question that we normally get, I usually start it off with, is how you got in this business. And I don't mean what did you drive to get here. So Jeff, what led you into working in film?
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Yes. All right, how's everyone doing? Everyone awake? Everyone's good? Yeah, excited? Before I answer that, just how many people here are actually genuinely interested in storyboarding? Show of hands, how many? Okay, those that are interested, I have flyers for Storyboard workshop that I do in LA and New York. So come to the autograph booth afterwards and follow me on social media, Storyboard Guru, at Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I can tell you, elaborate more on everything that I talk about today. And I do private tutoring and all that stuff there. So I'll give you quick now, and then we can always talk afterwards.
We'll announce where we're going to be at the end of this.
But short end of it is, I was a comic book junkie growing up. Thought I was going to do comic books. Not a lot of money comic books unless you are Jim Lee. Found out about storyboarding, and then figured, okay, that's working on the movie, and it pays better. And then basically just was constantly doing. Constantly storyboarding things for friends in live action. So all my friends in art school were film. I went to School of Visual Arts in New York City, and essentially moved out here and started doing low budget, no budget stuff, and then was constantly just saying yes to everything, and then found out, oh, you have to get in a union. That was a 4-year uphill battle, lots of hoops to go through with that. But essentially, once you're in that club, now you can work on all these big projects. But essentially, it's persistence, but I just basically kept boarding as much as I could and just kind of keeping my eye on that target. And then it's just showing up and being persistent about it, and that's sort of the short end of it, if that makes sense.
Okay, Amy?
Hi, good morning, or afternoon. My story is really similar to Jeff's. I originally wanted to go into comic books, or actually animation. I was really influenced by Disney growing up. Took some animation classes and realized, not for me. I don't have the patience to draw and sit and redraw the same image over and over and over and over. But when I was in college, I was introduced to storyboarding by one of my professors, and so I kind of fell in love with that. At the time, there wasn't DVDs like they have now with all the special features, so I would just go to the library and look at books, and just kind of studied on my own. I did go to school, I went to UC Davis. I studied studio art. Is there an Aggie here? Yes! Go Ags. I studied, storyboards out of books and whatever art of books that I could find, and taught myself that, and I just decided to move down to LA. Similar to Jeff, I went on Craigslist, did all the low budget, no budget things that I could do. Got to know as many people as I could, and always was constantly studying storyboards. And as time went on, DVDs were released that had special features, and then there was the internet, so I just kept studying and learning about storyboards as much as I could, trying to meet other storyboard artists. Jeff was the first storyboard artist that I met, and so we've kind of grown up together in the industry. And yeah, just kept working at it, was persistent, and you know, my love is for drawing and storyboards. I was very fortunate to get into union to be able to work on these things, but even if not, I think I would still say keep going for it and just do what you love to do.
Okay, well, Rob.
Good morning. It's my first time doing this, so it's a little bit nerve-wracking for me, but give it a shot. I worked on Batman versus Superman also, so is it okay that I'm up here?
Hey, you know what? If there's not a guy from Warner Brothers with a dart gun in the room, then go ahead.
Okay, I'm good.
We don't know you.
I'm good. Okay. Basically, I started out, I went to Pasadena City College. I went there for 2 years. I made a deal with my wife that I would never get a B in a class if I went there for 2 years straight, so I went there 2 years straight with straight A's. Never got a B on a homework assignment, never got a B on a quiz, never got a B on a test, straight A's. And by doing that, that was just to prove to her I was serious about doing this. And then I transferred to Art Center College. I got some scholarship money along the way, graduated from there, and did some theme park ride design for a while, did some animation, did a little bit of, did some music videos for some singers and some performers. Got into, then I was approached by the visual effects crew from Independence Day to do some concept art for pre-production for a film they were doing. And didn't know what it was, never heard of it before, I just was drawing pictures, painting. And it was there I met Patrick Tatopoulos, who's been like a friend and mentor for many years. And I worked with him on several films. And then I got into the part where they wanted me to work on the Die Hard film. And I wasn't in the union, and I couldn't work on the show. So I had a lot of people vouch for me, got me in as a junior illustrator, and I worked my way up to a senior illustrator, and it's been about 30 plus motion pictures now, and now I work on all kinds of projects: films, videos, music videos, television, commercials, all kinds of venues, and I've had a blast. I can't imagine doing anything else. So.
All right, Patrick.
Well, I was just listening to everybody's stories, and there's some overlaps and some nots, but it sounds like a lot of us share a lot of the same stories. I went to Santa Clara University up in the Bay Area, and I may as well have been on the opposite side of the planet from Hollywood, so it was just one of those things where someone asked me, like, would I like to do this job? I would be like, hell yeah, or heck yeah, but but I had no way, no path, so it was just like, yeah, sure. And I'd also like to be an astronaut, you know. So I remember going through this completely circuitous route of desktop publishing and web design and all these things. But my senior show, I got an art degree from Santa Clara, and my senior show had comic book pages. And I remember there was people in there who wouldn't show with me because they wanted to show their paintings, you know, because it was like a fine art kind of thing, and I was kind of in my own world. But fast forward, I went along doing graphic design, but I was just like, no, I've really got to focus on something I love to do. And I had done a lot of different things. I was an art director doing like the Los Angeles Dodgers website and working at Yahoo and different things. And then I went to Noman. And I went there for a little over a year, and I was lucky enough that they had a class in pre-visualization and animation, and I kind of took both tracks for a while, and then I just kind of fumbled around. It was kind of like groping around in the dark. I did so many different things. I worked at South Park. I did previs for years, and I worked on one person, Mark Graziano's personal project. He's like the head of post at DreamWorks, and I didn't think much about it. And then I got a call out of the blue while I was working on like I think it was either Mr. Popper's Penguins or the A-Team, and I was doing previs, and I got this call to go and animate storyboards, actually Ed Natividad storyboards. So it was just one of those random things, and it turned into allowing me to meet the right people and get some more experience, and all of the experiences I had all those years have helped. Now I do a lot of teaching, and I also do storyboards and concept art and some previs. And looking back at it all, it's all helped out. I've run into so many people who are like, don't know how to do certain things I know how to do. And I go, oh, I guess because I did graphic design, or because I did Flash animation, or worked at South Park, or did all these weird things, I'm able to do a lot of what's asked of me. It's been really helpful.
Well, it actually reminds me that copies of Perspective magazine are floating around here. If you don't have one right now, you could probably get one before leaving this room, or pick up one at the autograph area that we're going to be at after this. And we have some comic books in there, comic book pages. Patrick has some work, and I do. I started in comic books, which was a difficult thing for somebody from the West Coast, since everything was on the East Coast. Now it's all on the West Coast. Marvel and DC, they're all like 10 minutes away from where I live now. But I ended up bouncing around on comic books, then went into animation, did storyboard cleanup, which was a way of learning how to do storyboards at the time, for animation at least. Got into live action through commercials, and also the occasional non-union job like Super Mario Brothers, or I worked a little bit with Jim Cameron for the teaser trailer for Terminator 2, which is hard to say without doing all the T. And eventually I got on Stargate, where I also worked with Patrick Tatopoulos. One of my scenes was sort of animating the costume design, where the soldiers who have like the bird heads and the jackal heads. Anyway, I got in the union that way, and from there it's been gravy. And if you believe that, oh well. In any case, yeah, so we all have a little bit of a story to tell how we got into this union, and if that's something you'd like us to discuss later, about midway, I'm going to ask you guys to go to that microphone over there if you have any questions for us directly, and that may be like the second half of this, so I don't have to speak for much longer. All right. We have people here who have different skill sets. We got quite a few storyboard artists, but not all of us just specialize in one thing. And the art department is actually changing a lot. I mean, obviously, digital, computer, that type of thing, but it's also been changing in lots of other ways. And I'd like to ask that question: is how do you feel like the film industry is changing, or the art department is changing in regards to you? So, Jeff, you want to start?
Sure. I have to think. I guess, yeah, just when I first started, I would do it on a light box traditionally. So my process has changed a little bit. Now, like, the Cintiq is out, and so essentially my process changed where, because technology has been changing a lot. So essentially my process would be, I used to just do it on a light box or whatever, and now it's like I'll do my thumbnails on Post-its, and then I'll scan that in, and then I'll clean things up on the Cintiq. So the Cintiq has made things easier, and then also, yeah, more previs, and I think there's a lot of fear about that sometimes, but I think it's just being able to communicate with everyone, and I just see that they use my boards as like a roadmap in previs, where it's like, oh, okay, he runs, he jumps, he falls, and then they'll start to physically animate that, and then it just all kind of blends together. So I'd say technology with the Cintiq and the previs were the two things that I see.
Okay, Amy? Just how do you see the art department changing, and how you deal with it?
I don't know. That's a really tough question for me. On some jobs that I've worked on, I've gotten to work very closely with the art department. And other jobs, I'm completely kept away from the art department. Storyboards, we kind of fall in the middle, where sometimes art department wants us around, and sometimes we're just considered property of the director, and we're kept totally aside. But one of the things, like with the technology, so it's become a lot more easier to interact with the art department, at least for me, with being able to get digital sets, or at least 3D models of the sets or the renderings that the concept artists do to help inform my work. And with previs, for me, it's just been a lot more, because I think technology helps this, easier interaction between all the departments, so that I'm actually able to help not just do storyboards to inform the director, but to also do storyboards to work together with the art department and say, okay, this is the concept you came up with, how does this fit into the boards that I'm doing, and vice versa, and be able to talk to the art department and say, this is what I've worked out with the director, can we reflect this in the set or in the concept art. But so it's become, for me, as my career has gone on, I've learned to make it more of an integrated process among all the departments.
Okay, Rob, how about you?
When I started, the departments used to load up on markers, and they had all the fun toys we used to be able to collect and take home.
I
and
still
steal.
ask our department to buy me all.
It's easier than trying to ask them to buy you a new computer or something. Technically, they're supposed to provide the materials we work on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it used to be a drawer where you open it up and it had everything you could ever imagine or want in there. And I remember on Iron Man 3, the production designer wanted to show me some sketches for something he wanted to do, and we were in the art department and we couldn't find a pen. So we had to run down the hall and ask a secretary, and she just had this look on her face like, I can't believe you come from an art department with no pens. That's how it's changed for us. So now everything is digital. I work on Cintiqs all the time. I work in 3D, I work in 2D, I do it all now. I have to. It's the only way to really survive out there. Unless you're a storyboard artist and you get to have all the fun and draw all day. So, but that's
What you think of us, huh?
I envy storyboard. I wish I could go back and do it more often. But yeah, that's how it's changed for me. Art departments used to have this heavy ammonia smell from the blue lines, and I miss that. They don't have them anymore. And now you walk in there and it's dark and there's nothing but screens on. So that's how it's changed for me.
Well, it depends on which side of the bed I get up in the morning. Sometimes it's so exciting because instead of a drawer of tools, it's oh my gosh, I've got a dozen 3D and 2D applications to work with and play with, and sometimes you're just sort of almost like overload. You go, which one am I going to start with this time? I mean, there's just so many choices. Also because I do a fair amount of teaching as well, so I've opened myself up to kind of learning a lot of different applications that maybe I wouldn't even think to use as much. There's just so many choices. So it's exciting in that way, but on the other side, you kind of run screaming thinking, it'd be so much easier just or more fun to draw or something. But I say that, but I do love the technology. And that was one of the reasons why I went the route I went, which was that I felt like early on in my career that if I added a computer to it that I could make enough money to get by. And coming from the Bay Area, it's probably pretty close to Los Angeles, where everything is just really expensive. So you're like, how would I pay back my student loans? How would I buy a house here? And this and that. So I always kind of was like, well, I'll be an artist, but I'll add the computers to it. And the philosophy was sort of like, if the best artist was around today, what would they be using? And I think, maybe they were using oils in their day, but if they were, like had a Bill and Ted kind of whatever time machine today, they would probably be using Maya, I guess. So that was just sort of like my rationale too, was like, it backed it up, that it was like, yeah, okay, they'd be playing with the latest, coolest toys, and so that's what I want to learn. And so, but it's kind of like, that's the two minds, is that it's fun to chase all the newest toys, and then at the same time, you feel like all you're doing is learning. You're not, and maybe you're not even creating the art in as much as trying to figure out how to do this in this package or that in that package, and it makes your mind explode sometimes. But yeah, all that they've said since I'm the last one, it's definitely you're on your couch at home. A lot of times working on a production, you're like, wow, cool, I'm working on this great, cool commercial with this great art director, awesome, and I'm on my couch. Or other times, you're in there and you're like, oh, this is cool to see everybody, So it's definitely, you've got both worlds and they're extreme,
Well, when I saw the writing on the wall when I worked on Jumanji, and they started making that a digital workplace where the set designers were working on programs that were meant for architects, and the production designer was actually using, the first time I ever saw somebody use Photoshop, he scanned a painting that he did and he started adding things like pictures from an art book and other things to it, and so, but at the same time, we were asked to work on Scratchboard at one point, and we had to put our foot down when he said, can you do your boards in charcoal? I said, no. But when I eventually, like 10 years later, got a computer, I mainly treated it like a color fax machine, really. I was just going to do my thing and just scan it and then send it. But as it turned out, it's like getting out in the middle of a river in a canoe, and eventually the water starts taking you down the rapids, and it's all you can do just to hang on, So it's been pretty amazing that way. I have one more question before we go to your questions, and that is, can you describe your favorite project that you've ever worked on? Jeff?
Yeah. I worked on this movie called Burlesque with, it had Cher and Christina Aguilera in it, both interesting human beings, but that was the best job ever. I was on it for like 6 months, and then I was just hanging out drawing half-naked dancing chicks and Christina and Cher and all these people and getting paid for it. And then and then I worked on this movie. I worked with Seth Rogen and those guys a lot. This Is the End. That was probably also one of the best jobs I ever worked on. So, and I can tell you more after this. Come and find me, I'll tell you more.
All right, Amy.
Best movie ever is Jurassic World. That's it. I don't have anything else to say besides that. I did help out on This Is the End, and it was the Backstreet Boys sequence at the end, and we got to meet the Backstreet Boys, and that was really fun because all 5 of them, they all got back together. Those are my 2 favorites.
Okay, Rob, you have a favorite?
I've got a couple. One of them is, the first one's Batman versus Superman, but that one I can't tell you anything about, so that's out. The next one was Transformers, Dark of the Moon. I got Michael Bay stories I can dine out for the rest of my life on that. That guy was something. Something.
Well, since you set the precedent, I have 2 then. I guess my first movie in the union was Cowboys and Aliens, and getting to work with Edna Tividad and Christopher Ross, that was amazing. And everyone was so cool. Scott Chambliss was the production designer. So it's one of those where, like, Cowboys and Aliens, that's such a random choice, but that was the movie that I got into the union on and got to work with those amazing directors and those amazing people and directors. I mean, I got to work with Bobby Kurtzman and Alex, Robert and Bobby, KO Productions. But they're the same guys who wrote the Transformers stuff. So it's like, just like weird that they would all come together on that kind of movie. But that was just a lot of firsts and really exciting. And then Iron Man 2 was really amazing as well because I got to do previs on that and work with Dave Lowery and that whole team of storyboard artists and get to meet Stephen Platt, who had always kind of heard his name and saw his artwork, from being younger, and then be like, oh my gosh, I'm in the art department with him, sort of. I was on the previs team, but it was, and then after I worked on that previs, I got to meet Dan Sudick, who was, he's this legendary multi-Academy Award nominated special effects guy who's super humble for all that he's done. And he asked me to go over and work with his team doing modeling. And so I got to work twice on Iron Man 2. It was like, well, this is amazing. And then when I went over to his shop, they were over in Downey with this just like gigantic NASA hangar where they built like the tail end of the space shuttle or something, But now it's just they do a lot of movie stuff in there. And we would be in his air-conditioned office up there, and we'd walk down to go to the bathroom, and we'd walk in, and it'd just be like, and just imagine these gigantic halls where there's all these like little sparks flying and people are welding stuff and they're like making all of the stuff for Iron Man, all the practical effects stuff. And it was just like, oh my gosh, I'm just taking mental snapshots. So that was amazing. So those are my 2.
Okay, while I blather on about what I like, if anybody wants to ask questions, can you start lining up now? And I actually have a hard time answering this question, even though I asked it, and that is because I have either a really good time on a film and it's a complete dog, or I work on a film I really love and I have been miserable. And Jurassic World is like one of my bucket list things. It's one of those things where I was sad that I didn't think they were going to make any more of them, and I wasn't ever going to get a chance to work on something like that. And when I did, it was like brilliant, but it's the worst damn commute in the world from where I live to where they were set up. And on my second day on the job, I got my '65 Mustang got rear-ended by a delivery truck. And so I had to deal with that the whole time. On the other hand, I also got a trip to Australia on Son of the Mask, and that was such a complete piece of poo that it was only in theaters for 2 weeks. But I spent approximately, I guess, 6 weeks, something like that, longer than that. I think about 2 months, and about 3 weeks of it was exploring Australia and New Zealand. So, I mean, can't get any better than that, you know. Okay, so let's start off with the questions. Yes, you first.
I'm Nell Mano. I'm a movie critic, and I'm not at all knowledgeable about this stuff, so it's fascinating to me. It seemed to me when we were looking at the reel that there were many different kinds of work there. There was some that was very rough, there was some that was very finished, there was some black and white, some in color. Could you sort of walk us through some of the stage and tell me the difference between previs, concept art, and some of the other kinds of drawings that we saw?
I'll start it off just because when we're talking about the art department, some of us are here either at the same time, we work at the same time, or in stages. A board artist can end up working with the director before an art department is even chosen, before there's even a production designer. On the other hand, a lot of times what we do is based on the concepts and things that are done in the art department. So Rob would be like designing vehicles and things like that, and those are what we would like to use in our storyboards. But Jeff, you had why don't you describe your storyboarding?
I think what I can just share my experience with that is, my process and my experience is this, and that is when I get the script, most of the time, director is just take a crack at it. I don't know, figure it out, do my job. And then I will do a first pass of thumbnails, and those are the rougher things that I just do on Post-its on the wall. I step back, I look at them, I send those Post-its off to the powers that be, and then after, they'll be back and forth, and then after they've been blessed, then I go in and I clean them up in the Cintiq, like digitally. So I'm not gonna send them a beautiful clean drawing, and then that's great, but okay, now it's a dog, now it's a cat, now it's a plane, and so not until they've gotten blessed. 90% of the jobs I work on, they don't even, no, don't clean it up, we don't have time, we don't have the money. Unless it's like Snow White, Terminator, where it's like $170 million, okay, yeah, go ahead and clean it up. So you have to remove ego from that. It's not about your drawing. They don't care, So.
Okay, Amy, how about your process?
My process is similar. I may or may not get a script, which sounds ridiculous, but sometimes they're like, we have this story, figure it out. But my process is similar, where I'll sit down and sometimes without a director, I'll get direction, do thumbnails, present that, and then from there, it's either clean it up and we'll distribute it, or sometimes it's, let's give it to previs. They'll previs it out, something won't work, and it'll come back to me and say, this wasn't working in previs, let's storyboard it more and work it through. I've also had experiences where I've completed a scene, but then art department has come in, something new was designed, and then they'll say, we need you to redo these boards to reflect the set that we've actually built, or this prop that we've actually designed, or something where it's important for them to know to send off to visual effects later on. So our boards are informing many different departments. That's been my experience.
Okay, Rob.
My background usually, the way I work, usually I'll get a call and it'll be either for, say, various points of the production. For if it's, say, in a pitch phase, then it's a producer or a director trying to get a project greenlit, so they need some concept art to go with it. Other times I'll be on pre-production, which is working with a production designer or a director, and they basically tell us what they need us to design through a shot list. Sometimes a script if they let us see it, and then other times it's the script is in sort of a room like a vault. You have to go in there and read parts of it because they won't let you take the whole thing. And we just spend all that time designing things for the film. And then there are other times where after they make the film in post-production, they want to do reshoots and or some sort of visual effects post-production designs they need. They'll call us up, have us come in and set up all these designs as well. So concept art can be from the very, very first image to the very, very last image. So depending on the project.
Okay, Patrick?
Well, I've been lucky enough to do all three of the different things that we represent up here: storyboards, pre-visualization, when it comes to like 3D animation, and concept art. And what's funny is that early on I realized that it was a lot like making comics, like comic books. I don't know if you're familiar with how comic books are made, but if you listen to like Stan Lee and how he talked about it, it was like, oh yeah, sometimes you draw it and then I'd go back in and write it, and you're like, what? And then you've got all these different ways that they can do it. Like they can write out beats or write the script. Like everything's really tightly scripted before it's handed off to the artist. So it's funny because if you were to tell someone how to make a movie, you'd say, you know, write the script, then you'd write the story, draw the storyboards, and then that would be passed. And then you'd have the concept artist working alongside at the same time as a previs artist or something like that, and you have all this, and it makes sense. But then in the actual production, it's almost like they want to set as many fires at the same time and have them just go. And they want to believe that everybody's talking and everybody knows what everybody's doing and everything's smooth. But like at one point I remember working on a film, I won't say which, but I said, I think these two storyboard artists are storyboarding the same section. And you know, the art director was like vehemently, there's no way that would happen. That's a complete waste of people's time.
I was just on a show where the director gave us 3 artists. He said, you all 3 storyboard this scene differently.
But they don't want to
art
admit
department
that
was very
necessarily
upset.
to the money man, maybe, because
Yeah.
it's like, what? I never pay to have that happen. But it's like,
This is a movie production gone wrong, by the way.
right.
I
And-
experienced that on Scorpion King, where you had armed camps of the producers, the director, the art department, and the stunts, and they all had their storyboard artist.
Thank you very much. This is a great panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question, please.
Hello.
Can you?
I was just wondering what it takes to get into the Art Directors Guild.
Okay, well, it's different now than it was when most of us actually got in. And I'm going to make this a quick answer. And if you want a more detailed one, we are going to be at the autograph section in the pavilion at 2 o'clock from 2 to 3. You can pick our brains until they're clean. No, number 4, that's what I'm saying. Okay, I'm going to explain time to this gentleman over here. 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. We're going to be at table 4 in the pavilion section. And so everybody wants detailed questions, please come and pick our brains. Anyway, as far as your answer, there's a lot of different ways going in here, and people who actually can do the job can get hired now. It's a little bit more open than it used to be. If you know a director, if the director likes you, if you do favors for him, I don't know. You could actually get hired on a film without being in the union now. One hire. So I hope that answered your question for the moment.
Yeah, that did.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a set designer, but I'm interested in getting more into storyboarding. And my question was, what amount of artistic freedom do you guys have in working with the director and possibly the cinematographer? I'm not quite sure how that works.
I'll begin it and then I'll pass it on a little bit for the board artists here. It changes between every show, and it has everything to do with how the director wants to work. And in my experience, the cinematographer is brought in at some point, but usually you don't really deal with them unless you're on set on a film that is currently filming, in which case then you're dealing with the cinematographer.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And to answer both your question and the previous one, I talk about all this in my workshop, so come find me afterwards on, designing the shot as my workshop. And it goes over how to get in the union, portfolio, and then it also talks about working with directors. And there's 5 common ways that I've seen directors will work, and I talk about that. But the short end of that is every project's different. Some jobs I'm not really working much with the director. It's the stunt coordinator and the DP, or maybe it's just me and the DP, or maybe it's just me and the stunt coordinator, because it depends on what the movie is. The director's too busy meeting with Angelina Jolie. He doesn't have time to go over the scene. But he trusts his DP, and he knows his stunt guy's gonna do it because he did the last 5 movies with him. So, okay, you're just, or it's the AD. And then, so you're not necessarily in a room just with that director, but the common ways that I've seen, I do go over, and essentially it's a collaborative force, and you're just kind of taking your cues from these other people, like, okay, well, I think we need to just shoot it from this angle because the guy has to fall, and then the background's going to be green screen. So it varies on project to project, but I talk about that in my workshop, so.
Okay,
that
maybe we
helps.
can move on to the next gentleman.
Hey, so I work as an illustrator in non-film
Can you speak into
industry.
the?
Oh yeah, is that good? Okay, I work as an illustrator, and I'm just curious how you guys handle continuing to grow as an artist while you're working full-time in film. Does it usually come, like, the opportunities for growth while you're working on a film, or do you have to find that outside of the project that you're working on just to, like, find new things, inspiration, and ways to grow and to, you know, be the best?
My answer is yes.
I do something called pencil push-ups. I have my own private studio. I constantly draw from life. I'm very interested in fine art world, figure anatomy. And that's the other thing about being a successful storyboarder. The stronger you know anatomy, the better you can draw someone from your brain. Like, the better you're going to be able to communicate those angles and shots, including perspective. If you don't know perspective, it's going to hurt you, because when the DP looks at your boards, he doesn't care about your drawing. He cares about where is the camera starting, where is it ending, and you need to communicate that through perspective. So I think if anyone that's really aspiring to do this, you really should definitely be drawing from life constantly, really ingrained figure anatomy and perspective in your brain. So I do my own pencil push-ups of drawing from life constantly. That's like all I do when I'm not storyboarding.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a general question on how do you pursue art, you know, as opposed to just drawing for a buck. So, Amy, do you got anything like that?
I personally just, the work that I do for work is work. It's not my personal art, and although I love drawing, like, I can't imagine doing anything in life as a career without drawing, but I do have to do my own art on the side, and sometimes when I am working, I'm just too tired to do my own drawings, but I always try to find time to, you know, always learn, study from other artists, whether it be other storyboard artists, other illustrators, you know, just keep going, but it's my love, so I always find time for that.
Okay, Rob.
I don't have any time for anything. I juggle a lot of projects at once, and when I do have free time, I don't want to draw. I don't want to paint. I don't want to do anything. I just, like Ed Natividad always says, I just want to go home and play with my dogs. I don't want to do it. Honestly, it's exhausting. It's a lot of work. It's, you know, 12 to 15 hours of people asking you to make up stuff, and it's, after a while, it's very, very tiring. So. If
So
I
you
do
don't
it,
express your soul in interpretive dance or anything like that?
nah. I mean,
Okay.
I used to, and now
You were a dancer too.
I'm 41 years old. I got to watch out for my health too, so I can't be working 20 hours a day like a lot of these young guys do. But you know, if I do have spare time, I'm usually learning from other people. A lot of guys that work for me or I work for, I listen to their stuff all the time, my tutorials, Noman stuff. A lot of my friends are doing out tutorials, so, you know, I always have to goof on them whenever I get a chance, you know. And I have a great, I just don't have that much time for it anymore like I used to. Eventually I want to just paint on the beach. That's my big goal. Retire and paint on the beach.
Okay, Patrick,
I
you
have
got
I have some I have personal projects I've always had personal projects, and they've always helped me because I'll be really into them, and then, you know, if I'm trying to get a job, at least I have something to show of what I'm super passionate about, not maybe what I was asked to do on my last job, you know. And so that's been helpful. So it's been one of those things where my passion project that maybe didn't make any money, if you know what I mean, and like my little comic or something, but then they're like, but you finished it, but it looks great, and then you're like, okay, well, don't have time to market it as much, but it did get me to the next level or whatever. But yeah, I'm definitely wanting to tell my own stories, wanting to do my own things. So I keep doing it, you know, in any spare time I can have.
You know, if nobody's hiring me to do pretty girls or, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that, draw pretty girls or monsters, I'm doing that while watching TV or something. So can we, next person? And we time for one more.
Hi. Okay, so I think a couple of you mentioned being like growing up with comics and really loving comics and like loving to draw them. Well, I don't know if you said that, but I wanted to ask, was there any like artists, like, I mean, I can think of like Frank Miller, like, was there any artist that you like really like clung on, like you really liked in comics when you were a kid, and like you wanted to emulate them for a little bit, but then also add your own style to, you know, like whatever? I mean, was there anyone like that?
I have sort of a groin pull. I got Charles Schultz, Don Martin, Wally Wood, Neil Adams, Bernie Wrightson, Russ Manning, and I constantly fall in love with other artists up until today. There's always people that just inspire me. So.
Yeah, definitely Frank Miller. There's another guy who's here at the con, Scott Hampton, is an amazing artist, does amazing watercolors and gouache. And then I was a big Dark Horse guy, so this comic book called The Mask, which you worked on, the guy who drew that, Doug Meineke or something.
Doug Meineke, yeah.
If you look at his, like, you could see his style change over the period of those Mask comic books. Those are the ones that, and Chris Wagner, I think he was the guy that did some stuff for Dark Horse. A lot of Dark Horse guys. Those are some popped in my head.
Amy, you got any influences?
Yeah, Dan Jurgens, John Byrne, Jim Lee. Right now I'm into Sean Gordon Murphy and Gabriel Hardman.
Okay, Rob?
Comic book wise, Greg Capullo, I love his work. It's beautiful work. Todd McFarlane's my big hero. I mean, just in terms of not only as a comic book artist, but as a businessman. Those are the two guys I really like.
Okay, Patrick?
Yeah, somebody's already mentioned John Byrne. Growing up, I was thinking about John Byrne, and definitely, I didn't want to mention Todd McFarlane, but he was my inspiration. He was definitely
touch you inappropriately, or?
Maybe, with all those Spawn things, they're pretty sick and twisted. But the funny thing is that I appreciated his work. I like his work. I like his work a lot. But it was Capullo who inked it, and then you'd be like, oh, so when Capullo inks it, it looks like that, and when someone else inks it, it looks like that. Okay, so so I loved his work. He did the 10th, right?
Yeah.
Loved his work. But I was going to say Dale Keown. I always loved his work, and I think he had some sort of legal problem, so he could never come out from Canada to the Comic-Con or something, and so I always wished I could see him. But then I heard that, I was like, oh, he did Pitt years ago.
Nothing like a Roman Polanski thing, is it?
He was always, no. I think it was just something to do with something that's going to be becoming more legal now anyways, and at least it is over in California, so
okay.
Be like, come on over from Canada, you're good now. But yeah, those are some of mine.
Okay, the rest of you that are asking, could you please come and see us at the pavilion? We got just enough time to see if there's any personal plugs. Jeff, you plugged your ass off already, so Amy, you want to have any plugs? Rob, you got anything you want to promote?
Check out Star Citizen, Batman vs. Superman. I don't know, check IMDb. I mean, there's some stuff on there, I don't know.
Okay, Patrick.
Personal plug would be, I'm always working on this little story called Gravitons, and I keep a couple pages in here and there, and you'll actually find them in Perspective magazine. I got a couple of pages in there, and Tim mentioned it earlier. I'm the guy who championed, hey, why don't we put a bunch of our comic work in the back of our art director's magazine? It's called Perspective. So I just helped motivate people to put their work in there, and I have a couple pages in there. So check out Gravitons and check out Perspective, and you'll find a bunch of great artists. Tim, who just worked on Jurassic Park, as well as San Andreas, has a bunch of pages in there, so you'll be able to see him, ask him to sign him or something. So,
okay, well, gang, my plug, basically, I'm starting, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm jumping in both feet to an online class, storyboarding class. If you want to find out about it, you can go to storyboardart.org. And everything else that I've been doing, the best of what I've been doing, is already out in the theaters. Jurassic World. Fantastic Four is coming out, but they're all pimply faced and hardly out of puberty, so I don't really give a crap, but all right. So I hope to see you, at least some of you, and talk with you over at the Pavilions area at 2 o'clock. And thank you to my panelists. And
insert with a regular size comic. It has like 32 pages.